I was lying on our bed, immersed in an erotic world, when I heard the garage door open. "Damn!" I exclaimed. Jumping to my feet, I glanced at the clock. 10:45. No, she couldn't be home yet. Oh, damn, 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 damn. I looked at our bedroom, the rose petals, the champagne, and thought about how my whole life was about to fall apart. I'm an architect and have been self-employed for about a year. It was incredibly difficult to work because I only had one client and my staff consisted of me, and me. My office was in an abandoned gas station. I tried to set up an office at home, but found that I took too many breaks to spend time with Judy and the girls. We had identical twin girls who were born 9 weeks before I graduated from the University of Texas 6 years ago. Their birth was unplanned, but we were very happy. We both wanted a large family, but something went wrong during the birth, and she was unable to conceive again. We tried several fertility treatments, but although the doctors were confident that some of the newer methods would be successful, we decided to put them on hold due to the high cost when I started living on my own. Judy stayed home with the girls until I opened my office. Money was tight and we needed extra income. So, without complaining, she took a job as an assistant manager at an oil company. Judy thought she had the perfect schedule for a working mother. From Monday to Thursday, she didn't get to work until 9 and left at 3. It was a perfect schedule except for Fridays when she had to be at the airport by 7:10 a.m. to fly to Dallas for a weekly meeting with her boss. The airport was a 20-minute drive from our house, or 30 if we drove the speed limit. It was a long day because the plane from Dallas didn't leave until 6:25, and Judy rarely got home before 8:15. And then, almost 4 months ago, things got even worse. Judy's boss got a promotion, and the meetings started to drag on. After they missed their flight several times and had to pay extra, they started booking only the last flight, which didn't arrive in Midland until 9:55. Judy usually got home closer to 11. I didn't like it, but since Judy didn't complain, I kept quiet. Tonight promised to be a lot of fun. And now it looks like it's all going to be ruined. I looked at my watch again, 10:45. No, she couldn't be home yet. I heard her car pulled into the garage. Why had she come home now when she was supposed to be on the plane, if the plane had arrived on time? But I knew the plane wouldn't arrive on time because, strangely enough, I had checked the flight schedule. I wanted everything to be perfectly timed for when she walked through the door. In my confused state, I looked around the room again. I saw the vase with rose petals that I was going to scatter on the bedspread, the champagne in the ice bucket I rented from the wine shop. I thought about the apple pie with caramelized nuts I bought at He-Bee. It took an hour to prepare the frozen pie, and I had put it in the oven just half an hour ago. I also bought 1905 vanilla ice cream at H-E-B for the filling. Hot apple pie with ice cream is Judy's favorite dessert, and it was one of the few dishes I had time to make. For a few precious seconds, I regretted that she had ruined my surprise. It was an important day for us. Today, I found out that the first house I designed had won the Frank Lloyd Wright Award. For an architect, it's like winning the Nobel Prize. I thought about announcing the award at the family dinner, but decided I wanted to tell Judy alone, so it would be the start of a romantic weekend. With the prize money, we could afford all the best things. I hoped Judy would be thrilled. The twins had gone away with their parents for the weekend in a camper van to see the sights. I told them I had some important news to share when we all got together for dinner on Sunday evening. I heard the garage door close, but Judy wasn't supposed to be back yet. My long-discarded suspicions came together and began to attack my mind and heart viciously. My intuition told me she was having an affair, but my heart refused to believe it. What do I really know? I asked myself. Her recent habit of going to the hot tub immediately after coming home on Fridays started when the late flights began. Since then, we never make love on Fridays when she comes home. She's too tired after work. But before the late flights, when she would arrive just a couple of hours earlier, she would practically throw herself at me when she returned from Dallas. If I hadn't been so pleasantly surprised, I would have asked her about it. After she started staying late at work, it never happened again. She was still just as responsive when I wanted to fool around, but not on Fridays. Of course, it was understandable after an 18-hour workday, but her talk about work changed too. So did our social life. When she first started working, we often went to small parties with her colleagues, and she would rave about what a great boss she had. I remember feeling jealous when I heard about his incredible business acumen, or when she talked about how much he looked like Sean Connery, in his prime, of course. Then, about 3 or 4 months ago, she stopped talking about him and we stopped seeing her coworkers. I remember breathing a sigh of relief because my own busy work schedule was too exhausting for me to enjoy evenings out. Now I was sure she had changed for a more sinister reason. As the reasons continued to surface, the most terrifying one came to light. I couldn't remember the last time she had told me she loved me. The last time she had kissed me tenderly on the cheek or hugged me without asking. Judy had always been an expressive woman, and now she wasn't. At least not with me. I froze mid-sentence. I wanted to shout that it wasn't true. The thought threatened to overwhelm me. Then she called, "Matt, where are you? I'm so glad to be home." Her voice sounded normal, but her tone didn't match the image I had created in my mind. I shook my head. This couldn't be happening. This wasn't my Judy. Maybe I was looking at the wrong flight. Or maybe the plane had somehow compensated for the time difference. In 3 steps, I walked over to the computer in our bedroom. I clicked log out, and the screensaver disappeared. I clicked refresh. Her flight number appeared on the screen with a caption. There was still half an hour to go before landing. I glanced back at our bed, crumpled from where I had been lying, and for a second I wanted to run away. I wanted to return to the land of denial, but I wasn't made for that. The question had been raised, and I had to get an answer. As I descended the stairs, I knew I wasn't speaking, but I felt a guttural sound rising in my throat. I approached her from behind and hugged her tightly. "Matt, please. You know how tired I am when I get back. Let me rest until tomorrow." "No, Matt, maybe later." "No, Matt." Twisting violently, she broke free with surprising strength and shouted, "Damn it! I said no!" She stood there, gasping for breath, and looked at me. I approached her, and my intentions were clear. Her eyes grew huge, and she said in a quiet voice that stopped me in my tracks, "No, Matt, you won't do that. I won't let you find out that way." I don't think I realized what I was doing until that moment. Those 13 words knocked me off my feet like a bull in a slaughterhouse. I was as shocked as if she had shot me. I looked at her and felt nothing. I couldn't understand it. I knew my world had just been shattered into pieces, but I felt nothing. I was unusually calm. I tried to feel something, anything. But there was nothing. In a voice so calm that I could hardly believe it was my own, I said, "You wouldn't have done this to us if you didn't love him. Did you ever love me?" Her face softened. "I loved you. I didn't want this to happen. I didn't want this. I never wanted this to happen. I never thought it would be like this. I didn't want to hear anymore." I interrupted her. "Are you going to marry him?" There was a tense silence, and I stared at her silently, demanding an answer. She bit her lower lip. "That question has been tormenting me, forcing me to make a decision." I was so confused I just couldn't. I interrupted her again. "Please be kind, go back to him. I just figured out this whole dirty trick because your plane hasn't arrived yet. I need to be alone to think things through." Judy approached me with a compassionate expression, intending to embrace me. "Oh, Matt, I am so sorry. I wish this had never happened. Please let me explain. I am so sorry you found out this way." I stepped back, feeling like a fragile piece of crystal, knowing that the slightest touch would shatter me into a million pieces. I took another step back, reaching out to stop her. "Please, just take whatever you need and leave. Mom and Dad went out with the girls. They won't be in touch until Sunday evening. We'll talk on Sunday afternoon. Until then, I don't want to see or hear from you." I trembled. Part of my brain wondered if it was rage, fear, or a heart attack. She looked at me with pleading eyes, opened her mouth to say something, but I cut her off with a firm no. Fear flashed across her face. She sighed and went into our bedroom. The numbness returned. I went into the living room, sank heavily into an armchair, and began to wonder how long this gray emptiness in my head would last. I don't know how much time passed before she returned. Her face was sad, but at the same time, it was the same expression I had seen on her face when she was told she would never be able to have children. "Matt, I saw what you were going to do. I didn't want to ruin everything. If you wanted to..." Those words hit me like a bolt from the blue. "Bitch." She was offering me pity. I started to get up from the chair. She saw my face, started crying, and ran away. She must have been sitting in the car for a long time because it was several minutes before I heard the garage door open and close. As soon as I heard the garage door close, I leaned back in my chair and was once again overcome by a colorless emptiness. I don't know how long I sat there immersed in complete Zen emptiness before I fell asleep. I woke up in a rage from a vivid dream in which Judy was doing it with her boss. Every part of my body ached as I got up from the chair, every joint screaming in pain. But I was burning with a rage I had never felt before. I went back to our bedroom. Our bedroom. There was no us anymore. There couldn't be us. In a red haze, I grabbed a bottle of champagne from the refrigerator and smashed everything I could until I got to a delicate Dresden figurine of a young woman in 100 little fur coats, covered in a pale blue ball gown and holding a fawn in her arms. It was Judy's only inheritance from her grandmother. As much as I wanted to smash that 6-inch porcelain doll, I just couldn't. I looked around the room. I had destroyed it, but it brought me no relief. I looked at the bottle of champagne in my hand and was surprised it hadn't broken. Without thinking, I tore off the wrapper, twisted the cork, and opened the bottle with a loud pop. The bubbles shot out like in the movies. I had never been a wine snob, but as a child, I had once read a biography of the Rothschild family. I promised myself that if I ever made it to the top, I would celebrate with one of the most expensive champagnes in the world, Chateau Lafite Rothschild Pauillac. I took a swig straight from the heavy glass bottle and vowed never to touch the drink again. It tasted disgusting. It didn't put me to sleep, but fatigue helped, and I fell asleep again. There were no dreams, thank God. I woke up a few hours later when the first rays of light came through the window. The anger I had felt was gone, and my mind was numb. Inside, I was dead. I tried to summon anger, then sadness, but nothing worked. I realized that my marriage was over, but my mind refused to accept reality. Instead, it searched for answers in the past. Judy and I met when I was attending the University of Texas. She was attending Southwest University in Georgetown and playing soccer on the 3rd Division team. I played soccer for the UT club and put together a team to participate in a soccer tournament held on the SU fields. Judy came to watch and caught my eye. I completely embarrassed myself trying to look my best. We didn't even make it out of the tournament, which we had won the previous year and were supposed to win the next. Judy, bless her heart, pretended not to notice. From that day on, we were inseparable. Driving 26.8 miles on Highway Y35, we burned through enough gas to last a lifetime, but who cared? I knew Judy and I were meant to be together when I stopped counting how many times we had fun. It was in a beautiful Four Seasons hotel room near the airport after the Tri-Delt Spring Festival on Friday night. But the funny thing is, we didn't do it on Friday night. Judy got scared. She said she couldn't do it without a permanent commitment. So I got it down on one knee and asked Judy to marry me. She said yes, but she still wanted a ring. I spent the night on the floor. As soon as the doors opened, we went to America's Diamond next to Highland Mall, and I bought a ring that I thought she would wear proudly for the rest of her life. Back in the room, we exchanged personal vows before God, and I put the ring on her finger. We got married the following Christmas vacation. We lived in Round Rock and both graduated a year later. I wasn't neglectful either. Even when I worked overtime, she never once said a word about missing home or needing my time. You've heard the expression, I worshiped the ground she walked on. In my case, it was true. When we were building this house, I drove to Georgetown and pulled up grass from their soccer field. That was exactly where I first saw her. I bought enough sod with the same grass to cover our yard, but that little sprout was the first thing I planted. No, our sex life was nothing to write home about. And our family life? I pressed my lips together, finding no answers in our past. Brewing myself a cup of Twinings Chinese black tea, I tried again to summon some emotion, even pain. But I still felt nothing. I could summon fake feelings, but real emotions were beyond my reach. I think my subconscious understood that I wasn't ready to deal with the pain yet, and I didn't have the strength for the rage I had felt before. Besides, I had to remain numb if I wanted to salvage anything from the mess Judy had left me in. I knew our marriage was over as soon as I found out she was cheating on me. After trashing the bedroom last night, I realized I wanted to hurt her, to punish her. In the morning, I was surprised to find that I had rummaged through all her clothes in her closet. I tore all her underwear and everything else in the closet to shreds. I didn't even notice that I had taken the fish knife out of the fishing tackle box until I saw it on the floor by the bed. This brought back memories of a childhood friend and filled me with horror. Desperately trying not to dwell on those terrible memories, I began to go over everything I knew about Judy's infidelity in my mind. First, she said she had thought about marrying him. I wondered why that thought didn't hurt me. My mind avoided even the image of Judy enclosed in the arms of this man, but the thought of her marrying him didn't bother me in the least. I continued to ponder this with the same unnatural detachment. With every fiber of my being, I felt that Judy still loved me. I was sure that if I pushed, I could get her back. I knew all her weaknesses. I had the advantage of the twins and her own moral code. I understood how guilty she must feel and, to be honest, how easily Judy could be manipulated. Then I thought about the man who was entertaining her. I knew quite a bit about her boss, James Capote. He was in his 40s, divorced from his second wife for over 5 years, and had 2 children. A son who was about to graduate from Midland Lee High School, and a daughter who was 2 years younger than him. According to Judy, he was always trying to spend more time with them, but he was only with them on weekends and alternating holidays. He didn't see them at all during the summer. I saw him many times shortly after Judy started working, but I hadn't seen him at all in the last 3 or 4 months. I didn't like him from the start. He had a wandering gaze. And although I could see that he was courting Judy, I found it hard to believe that Judy could have truly fallen in love with him. These thoughts made me dwell on what-ifs and what I did wrong. Instead, I sat down at my computer and started researching Texas divorce laws. I discovered that in Texas, a divorce can be final as soon as 60 days after filing. The court's decision must be read in open court, but the parties are not even required to be present if it is uncontested. The sooner it was over, the better, I thought. There were forms that could be printed out for a fee, and I gladly paid. I spent several hours thinking about what I wanted to achieve in the divorce agreement and how to get Judy to agree to my terms. In the end, I decided I wanted the best for my daughters. I considered calling to cancel our credit cards and empty our bank accounts, but decided that no matter how much I hated Judy, she wouldn't steal from me or our daughters. I needed a home so the girls wouldn't have to move. We had borrowed every penny to help me start my business, and it was only about $10,000. With the bonus, I could borrow enough to buy out Judy's share. With the bonus, my business would be worth a fortune. I didn't want her or, more importantly, that bastard Capote to have any claim on it. That was another reason to act quickly. The awards would not be announced until a big banquet 3 months later. The winners would not be announced until then, but it wasn't like the Oscars, where sometimes the winner is known in advance. I was told this because I hadn't planned on attending the ceremony in New York. Damn, if I didn't win the prize, I wouldn't be able to get a ticket. Yes, that was another good reason to hurry. And that meant I had to ensure a fair division if I wanted one. I was torn between wanting to get rid of everything that reminded me of our life together and wanting to make as few changes as possible for the girls. I decided to hire an appraiser to value everything we had, including the things I had destroyed. I would offer to buy the things in exchange for her half of our property. We would take turns choosing what we wanted until one of us reached half of the total value. I listed the remaining details of how to destroy our relationship, making notes and explanations on the forms I had purchased. By the end of the day, I thought I had a plan I could live with and that Judy would readily accept. I realized I hadn't eaten anything all day, and the mere thought of food made my stomach growl. But if I wanted to achieve my goals, I needed strength. Not trusting my culinary skills, I wondered what food would be best suited for a piece of our life together. I ordered pizza. As I ate, my thoughts returned to what I could do to hurt Judy, to make her suffer. I knew that once I got past the denial stage, the emotional pain would become unbearable. But how could I make her feel that pain too? Leaving me wouldn't hurt her as much as it would hurt me. Sure, she would regret it, but she would leave me for someone else. I would be left alone. I couldn't do anything that would break her heart. And yet, no matter how much I denied it, no matter how unacceptable what she had done was, I didn't think I could stop loving her. After a long internal struggle and much reflection, I realized that it wasn't up to me to decide whether to keep her or let her go. She made that choice when she took Capote into her body. The fact that my wife did that was unacceptable to me, period. If I wasn't the one deciding whether she would stay or go, what could I hope for in the worst-case scenario? And then the perfect solution came to me. I still wondered if I could pull it off. Judy had always obeyed my wishes. It drove me crazy that I could never get her to tell me where she wanted to go for dinner. She would grumble about my choice, but she refused to express her opinion until I made an issue of it. Could I use that to get her to do what I wanted? After all, it would be her choice. But I knew I had a chance. I knew her. Maybe not as well as I should have, but I knew how she reacted to pressure, and I knew I could put a lot of pressure on her. I spent late into the night making plans. Everything had to go very smoothly. Judy called a little after 8. I took a few deep breaths before answering. Judy, you've made your choice. Even if you didn't want to, you've made the choice for both of us. Now the question is how this will affect the girls. You know that divorce is always hard on children, especially at this age. The question is, do you want a war, or are we going to try to make this as easy as possible for them? Matt, please let me say I'm sorry I hurt you. I love you. I don't want you to hate me. I didn't expect it to go this far, but I was almost speechless when I heard the word love. Judy, every time I hear your voice, I start to hate you, and what you've done even more. Do you realize what this pathetic affair will do to the twins? We're trying to raise them with values and morals. How are we going to explain to them that you broke the most solemn vow a man can make for the sake of entertainment? Judy sobbed. It's not like that. Oh, sure it is. Even after several months, you still haven't decided to marry him. How is that going to sound to the girls? I paused and let the silence linger. Then I continued. I'm very sorry, but I was able to contact the family and ask them not to take the girls away for a while longer. If you agree, I'll bring them here at 5 o'clock and we'll tell them the news together. Otherwise, I'll tell them myself. I'll be polite to you while we talk to the girls, but this is the last time I want to hear your voice until we're divorced. I'm trying really hard not to say what I want to say. You'll always be the mother of my children, and we'll have to talk about that. Just don't pressure me right now. Matt, I really didn't mean to hurt you. Yeah, I know, it just happened. Let's get this over with as soon as possible. I'll pay the rent. I just hope you don't live with that jerk until the wedding. It'll really turn them on. I paused and let my pulse calm down. I'd like them to know as little as possible about this dirty business. It's up to you, only you. Can I come over now and talk? No. Please, Matt, I don't want it to end like this. I cut her off. I said, in the most decisive voice I could muster, our marriage ended the moment you spread your legs for him. I sighed dramatically. Whatever your reasons, you ruined everything. So let's just bury him with the utmost respect. I paused for effect, then said in a mournful tone, I really hope you marry him. Not just for the girls, but it will be easier for me too. I don't want to think that you destroyed our marriage just for your own pleasure. There was silence. Finally, Judy swallowed and said, All right, Matt, if that's what you want, I'll do as you wish. Next chapter. If hell exists, I've been there. The detachment remained. Otherwise, I would have died from the pain I saw in my little girl's eyes when Judy began the conversation with, You should know that Daddy and I love you very much, but sometimes adults make mistakes. She continued for several minutes, using euphemisms that the girls didn't understand. Finally, I said as gently as I could, Your mother has fallen in love with another man and now wants to marry him. I have agreed to this, so we will have to get a divorce. As soon as the words left my lips, I knew I would have done anything not to say them. A poem by Omar Khayyam that I had learned at school flashed through my mind, and I struggled to hold back the tears. A nimble finger writes, and having written, Hashkesh, he continues, neither piety nor wit will make him return to erase half a line, nor will tears wash away a single word. In the 10 centuries since he wrote that poem, nothing had changed. My whole world consisted of their two precious faces. I couldn't even see the rest of their bodies, only two small masks of pain. I wasn't much older than them when my friend's father from the soccer team killed his wife and then killed himself right in their living room. His little sister and my friend hid in their room while their parents screamed at each other. The only thing he remembers before the shots were his father's cry, They'd be better off orphans than with parents like you. His grandparents had a terrible custody battle, but his mother's parents, who lived in another state, won. I never saw him again, but in that moment, I understood how his father felt. It took all my willpower not to grab the gun and kill Judy. I had never hated anyone so much in my life. I thought I had, but until I saw what she was doing to my daughters, I had no idea what real hatred was. I know other things were being said, the girls were asking questions, and Judy was probably answering them. I didn't hear a sound. All I knew was that I was holding two little treasures in my arms. Finally, the question reached me. But Mommy, why don't you love Daddy anymore? I blinked, and the world was filled with color again. I saw a creature, but it couldn't be a human being. No human being could endure the pain that was written all over Judy's body. Her face was contorted with pain, but she tried to radiate love from my daughters. Mommy still loves Daddy. She will always love Daddy. I interrupted her. You won't understand this until you're older, but Mommy had to make a choice, and she chose him. Sometimes people love more than one person, but you can only marry one. Mommy has to marry Mr. Capote, but we'll all try to make it as easy as possible for you. Mr. Capote will love you very much, but I will always be your dad. You'll just have another person who loves you like a mom. Carrie, always the more expressive of the twins, broke free from my arms, rushed toward her mother, and began hitting Judy with all her might. A few seconds later, Lori followed suit, but picked up a long brass kaleidoscope from the coffee table. I pulled Lori away, but made no attempt to help Judy. Instead, I said in an unnaturally cold voice, "You've upset the girls. I think you'd better leave. I'll tell the captain when you can pick up your things." A few minutes later, both girls hugged me and cried. Judy opened her mouth, but I interrupted her. "You'll stay with the captain, right? Or do you want the girls to call you on your cell phone?" The water had washed the makeup off her face and her eyes were swollen, but her voice was calm when she replied, "I've spent the last 2 nights there. I haven't said anything yet. I was hoping we could talk to him as a family." I interrupted her again. "Girls, go to your room. Your mom and I need to talk alone." As soon as they left, I said, "As much as I respect and love the captain, he's your father, and I think you need to talk to him alone. Besides, I'm sure you'll want to start planning the wedding." I took a deep breath. "I have a package of legal documents that I've prepared. I'd like you to take them with you. I plan to divide our property and settle all matters. I'm sorry for my poor choice of words. I'll agree to almost anything you want except custody of the girls and the use of my last name. I'll agree if you marry Capote as soon as everything is settled. It will help hide what happened from the girls, but in any case, I want everything to be over as soon as possible. That is, 60 days from Monday." A minute ago, I was confused, but if you agree, we can meet with our lawyer in the morning and settle everything. I'm sure your boss will give you the day off, and I want the papers filed by tomorrow evening. If everything works out, I promise to do everything in my power to help your relationship with the girls. I will never tell them, the captain, or anyone else that you are a lying, two-faced whore who destroyed our happy home." Judy looked as if she wanted to interrupt, but finally tears began to flow down her cheeks. Without saying a word, she turned and quietly left the room. When I finally got the girls to bed, I settled into a chair. Resting my head in my hands, I whispered, "Captain, damn it, this is going to kill him. I'm so sorry this happened to him. He doesn't deserve this." Judy's father retired with the rank of admiral, although he never served in that rank and refused it. His last ship was one of the supercarriers. As a result of a botched landing while he was sitting in the back seat with a rookie pilot, he was left paralyzed from the waist down. Although I never considered him disabled, he lived in a wheelchair and urinated through a tube. Judy, a very late first daughter, was born shortly before the accident. Judy's mother died of cancer when Judy was still in high school, and the captain raised her alone. I have never met a better man than him. He was as much a father to me as my own, even more so. No, that's not fair. My father was a good father. He just spent his whole life working as a petroleum engineer and geologist. He was away most of the time, and although he did everything he could, we were never close. With the captain, it was different. I always said I could never leave Judy unless the captain left her. He was the first man I respected, who treated me like a man, not a child. When we got married, Judy and I still had almost a year and a half of school left. Even I knew I was a little immature for marriage, but the captain brought out the best in me. Confined to a wheelchair, he was still the most inspiring person I had ever met. I could talk for days about my feelings for him and how he had influenced my life. I took a deep breath, looked at my watch, and tried to convince myself that it was too late to call him. He answered on the second ring. "Son, first of all, let me say that I'm on your side. She's my daughter and I love her, but I can't believe she did something so stupid. I understand she's confused, but we talked for a long time. He told me about the problems he had faced in the Marine Corps. Wives cheating on their husbands when they were away for 6 months or even a year. He didn't say that some of them lived happily ever after, but I understood what he was getting at. As much as I wanted to, I respected him too much to interrupt. Finally, he got to the point. I've read your files. Is there any chance that if I beat that stupid bitch half to death, you'll consider giving her another chance?" I couldn't help but smile at the captain's hyperbole. We had discussed the problem of spanking our daughters many times. We both believed that a light spanking of a small child was more effective than trying to educate an immature brain, but neither of us was particularly good at it. I felt a chill in my chest and worried that I was having heart trouble. "No, sir. Captain, I'm sorry, but it wasn't a one-time mistake. I never understood how a man could destroy his wife, but now I do. I will spend the rest of my life trying to forgive her, but even if I succeed, I still won't be able to live with her. I sighed. I hated hearing those words, especially from my own mouth. But I couldn't be ambiguous with the captain. Besides, sir, even if I could, we've already talked and she loves him. I can't live with that, not even for the girls. The captain's voice became very soft. Son, she's not herself right now, but if you give her time. She said they were talking about marriage. I didn't even know what was going on, and they were talking about marriage. I know I work a lot, but I just can't justify it. I want her to marry a man, and we'll both live with it. I already told her I won't cheat on her. Captain, our marriage is over. But I think it's better if the twins don't grow up thinking their mother abandoned our marriage for a cheap romance. There was a long pause. She didn't tell me that. Son, are you sure this is what you want? You want to make her get married? I tried to sound as firm as possible. Judy and I will always be twins. Right now, I have absolutely no respect for her. If she's going to marry, at least let her do it like a human being. Who knows, maybe in a few years we'll both be able to look at it differently. The captain interjected. If she marries him, it will be bad and will complicate our relationship, yours and mine. You will always be the girl's grandfather, and I will always be their father. I'll leave it up to you to decide how much that suits you, but I will never give up what we have. I heard the captain sigh, then say, It's cruel, but we'll do as you wish. She chose her own path, let's see how she likes it. But you know how I feel about you. And you know, I don't believe that two wrongs make a right. I don't know how many times I've heard that or variations of heartless before. Throughout our conversation, I felt like I was being interrupted. I couldn't hear the voice in my head clearly, but I knew I was crossing a line that would turn my heart to hardened steel. I know, sir, but I have no choice. I can't take her back and look at myself in the mirror. No matter how much I love Judy, I will not be a weak husband. Even if I do, what kind of example will I set for my daughters? Judy destroyed our marriage. The sooner we make it legal, the better. The sooner we get through this, the sooner we will have a future. If I didn't know the captain, I would have thought I heard tears in his voice. Son, I'll run away to accept your divorce tomorrow. Just promise me that we'll stay in touch, that you won't push me away no matter how bad I feel. Please promise me. His voice trailed off. My own voice was a little hoarse when I said, I promise, sir. There was a heavy silence, and I heard the captain mutter something that could have been a farewell. I didn't trust my voice to say even that. I knew his pain was greater than mine. He loved us both. I hung up and, try as I might, couldn't bring myself to cry. I truly hated myself and Judy for what she had done to me. 3 months later, I sat alone at a table in the back of a huge hall. When I stepped forward to receive my award, they announced that I was the youngest winner in the history of the award. At 28, I was 7 years younger than the previous record holder. I stood up, gave my speech, and tried not to look at the ashes in my mouth. Nevertheless, it was impossible not to think about those days when I knew I was the winner. On Monday morning, the captain came to the lawyer's office, and every time Judy started to resist, he persuaded her to accept a favorable compromise. We finished before noon, and the papers were filed before the court closed. 61 days later, the judge read the sentence in open court, and we were divorced. A week later, Judy became Mrs. James Capote. It hurt, and the girls cried all week while the honeymoon lasted. As I flew home, I realized for the first time what I had lost. I was the most handsome architect on the planet. Clients begged me to take their money. And here I was, sitting alone on a plane. I had friends, I had parents, but even if I had killed a mastodon, I had no one to bring the carcass home to. When I got home, my phone was flooded with calls from potential clients. The only call I answered was from the captain. He said everything he needed to say to make me feel better and let me know how proud he was of me. Then he asked quietly, When did you find out? When I told him, he growled like only a former Marine can. When he calmed down, he said, That sucks. That really sucks. Then, in a calmer tone, he said, I know what it's like when life kicks you in the balls. Words won't help, but I'm here for you. He paused for a long time, then added, Son, there's nothing I can do to make things better. But if you want to have some fun, I'll either keep an eye on the girls or join you, and it's on me. Thanks, Captain, but don't mention her. I can't think of anyone I'd want to go out with tonight. I ended up going on a date with the captain, but I think it was the most depressing week of my life. 2 years after the divorce, I returned to New York to celebrate my professional triumph. At this year's banquet, the number of awards I received for my work on Frank Lloyd Wright's buildings increased to 4. Last year, I received one award for each house, and this year I received another one, which is unprecedented. I received the 4th award for a commercial building I designed for the city of Midland. The architectural world went crazy for it. I also became the first person in the history of the award to win in 2 different categories in the same year. So why was I sitting at the table without a single friend? Alone among complete strangers? Why did I feel lonelier than I had ever felt in my life? Why did I feel lonely? It wasn't that people didn't talk to me. I had to get a home phone with an unlisted number because potential clients from all over the world would call at all hours of the day and night. I was away from home more than I realized, but at least when I was home, I was home. I built an office close to home and only went downtown when there was a serious threat. When I was home, I didn't work until the girls left for school. Except for the month they were with Judy, our summers were one long trip. Of course, some of the time was spent visiting potential construction sites, but the girls loved seeing where my next project might be built. Most of the time, though, we spent exploring the area. I didn't want my project to look out of place in the local environment. Why was I lonely? It wasn't for lack of attention from the opposite sex. I didn't date women, but women from all over the world called me and asked if I would meet them. It seems that the story of my broken heart, which was supposed to be my greatest triumph, became widely known, and the world was full of women with broken hearts who wanted to help me fix the situation. It didn't hurt that I was making money faster than they could print it. Unfortunately, I didn't love myself, not one bit. I couldn't love myself, let alone fall in love with someone else until I loved myself. I couldn't overcome my problems. I just couldn't imagine a woman who would want someone like me. Instead of blaming myself, I tried to blame trust. I told myself that I just didn't know how to trust, and until I got better, I wouldn't bring anyone home who could get attached to the twins. To be honest, divorce is awful. As an adult, I didn't enjoy it, but as a parent, it broke my heart to see how it affected my beautiful girls. They never said a word about their mother, but they constantly made sarcastic remarks about their stepfather and his children. They never mentioned anything but arguments with their stepbrothers and sisters, but I knew it must be very hard for them. I was tormented by the thought of how hostile that family might be toward them. Next chapter. I returned from New York with red eyes and sat in a chair trying to recover from the trip when the phone rang. The captain didn't waste any words on small talk. "Son, that son of a bitch sent her to the hospital again. She's in the hospital now. You have to get her out of there before he destroys her. Even if you don't want to do it for Judy, think about the twins." I felt a wave of panic wash over me. "Where are the girls?" "Calm down, they're fine. They spent the night at their friend Laura's house. I called your parents to pick them up. Your parents took them on one of their trips. They'll bring them to you on Sunday evening." I breathed a sigh of relief. "Why don't you come over and we'll talk about it? This is the first I've heard that he treated her badly. Why does she let him do that?" "You know why. Don't pretend. No, we did everything we could to push her into this marriage. If she didn't know then that you wanted to give her a taste of her own medicine, she found out very quickly. She blames herself so much for what she did that she'll agree to anything." I clenched my teeth. I could fool myself, but I couldn't fool the captain. "I didn't think it would come to this. You knew he was a bastard. What did you think he would do when he found out you were responsible for his dismissal and the charges?" I swallowed hard. "Come in, Captain. We'll sort this out, I promise." There was a long pause, then the captain's voice became firm. "This shit has to stop. No one can treat my child like this. Judy made me promise I wouldn't do anything rash last time. I may be stuck in this chair, but this shit has to stop." "Of course. Captain, I'm sorry. For your sake, I really didn't think it would come to this. I'll be there in about an hour and a half. I'll stop by the hospital and try to talk some sense into Judy." "Damn him! Damn him!" He hung up, and I felt a chill run down my spine. The last word wasn't a curse, but a sincere damn. The captain was over 60 and not in the best of health, but he never stood by when innocent people were attacked. While I waited, I thought about my ultimate revenge. After my divorce, I spent days, if not weeks, trying to figure out how to get back at Capote. I just couldn't think of anything that would hurt him more than it hurt me. I was in decent shape, but even though he was almost 20 years older, he weighed about the same as he did when he played linebacker at Tech. I could have hit him without anyone noticing, But even if he didn't sue me, I wasn't sure I could beat him in a fight unless I spent years studying karate, and I didn't have time for that. I checked Texas law and realized I couldn't sue him for rejection. For over a year and a half, the lack of revenge was like a thorn in my side that I couldn't pull out. But then fate gave me a chance. The CEO of Capote accidentally met me at a charity event. The event was in Midland, for crying out loud, and this guy lived in New York. Somehow, he found out that I had won the FLW Community Building Award that year and wanted me to design a large office building for them in Midland. I arranged a meeting and showed him a computer model of the project I'd been working on for several years. Then, I told him the truth. If it had been any other company in the world, I would have gladly agreed to bring to life the dream I had been working on since childhood, but for his company, it was out of their budget. Of course, in a company of that size, he had never heard of Capote, let alone my ex-wife. When I insisted that I would not work for a company that allowed such behavior, he did not take it very well. A few weeks later, Capote was fired. The CEO called me to thank me. He said that in 15 years at the company, Capote had been accused half a dozen times. He told me that the last two cases had been reviewed, new charges had been found, and grounds for his dismissal had been established. A week later, we signed the contract. As I said, professionally, I was on top of the world. But after the captain's call, I realized with horror that my personal life was about to hit a new low. When the captain arrived more than an hour late, he just rolled into the room and didn't bother to explain why he was late. Without waiting for me to offer him coffee or anything else, he began, "Godson, she's fine. She'll be in the hospital for at least a week. Damn, they kept me there for only 3 days with a double bypass." He was shaking, and I couldn't help but notice that he stood there frozen, as if paralyzed. It added to the drama. He was silent for about 90 seconds and still couldn't control himself when he continued. "I can't let this happen. I supported everything you did with her because I thought she deserved it. But she doesn't deserve it, and you have to put an end to this." "How can I put an end to this, Captain? She's not my wife. There's nothing I can do. All she has to do is divorce him or take him to court." There was an authority in the captain's voice that I hadn't noticed before. I suddenly understood how his junior officers felt when something went wrong on his ship. "Don't try to fool me. I was there. I helped you. Damn it, you knew what you were doing, and you did it. You wanted her to know what it feels like when someone you love cheats on you, and you did everything you could to make her feel it. I love you, but you're the coldest bastard I've ever met. You'd make a good fighter pilot. You attack according to plan, without emotion. You knew what you wanted to do to Judy, and you did it. But for God's sake, tell me you didn't mean to do it." I was on the verge of vehement denial, but the look in his eyes froze my words. I lowered my head. "Yes, Captain, I knew what I was doing. I knew that any man who cheats like that will never stop cheating. Once a cheater, always a cheater." I raised my head and looked him in the eyes. They weren't hard or angry as I had expected, but there was a hint of compassion in them. I swallowed hard and continued. "I didn't think she would stay with him. Midland is a small town in many ways, and I made sure she found out about his cheating and thought she would divorce him." He interrupted me. "Were you going to get her back?" "No, Captain, I loved Judy, but I couldn't live with someone who didn't love me and chose someone else. I could forgive her for cheating on me, but not for falling in love with someone else. I know I pressured her into marrying him. I used girls, thought I was using you, and used her own moral principles to push her into a marriage that I was sure wouldn't last 6 months. I wanted to hurt her, but..." I stopped, wanting to say that I didn't want to hurt her that much, but I wasn't sure that was true. I felt sorry for the captain, but damn it, she'd made this mess, and I was more than happy that she was getting what she deserved. I tried to convince her to leave him when I saw her in the hospital, but she wouldn't. "The only person who can make her leave is you. You condemned her to this, and only you can fix it. Isn't it time you showed her a little mercy?" The captain paused. "To be honest, things didn't turn out the way I thought they would. I hoped that after she learned her lesson, repented, and came back to you on her knees, you would take her back. I've never seen anyone as devoted to her as you are. I still think that if she leaves him, you'll take her back. But I don't understand why you think she's stopped loving you." I asked her that last night, and she said, "I loved you, not I love you." She used the past tense, and that's when I knew there was no hope. It was an unconvincing answer to his question, but it was all I could say. The captain exploded. "And that's it? That's all you could say? One word of tension. The captain pulled himself together and stared at me. No, no, you knew better. It's time to find out what this has done to her. He shouted, then fell silent. After a few seconds, he seemed to pull himself together. He made one of those 180-degree turns that remind me of a motorcycle flip and rushed to my front door. Wait here. I need to get something from the car. Then he spun around again, turned to me, and in a commanding voice I had never heard before, he ordered, "No, you do it. In the passenger seat of my car, you'll find a brown paper grocery bag with several books inside. Bring them here." I don't usually respond well to formal orders, but this time I obeyed. When I handed him the bag, he told me to put it on the table. "Did you know that Judy kept a diary?" When I shook my head, he continued, "I didn't know either, but she did. When I arrived at the hospital, I demanded a divorce, but she wouldn't listen. He demanded that she'd give him the old diaries, but she refused. It was obvious that my daughter was afraid of what he would do if he found them. When I offered to keep them for her, she immediately agreed. She made me promise not to read them until she told me where they were hidden. I also promised not to let the guy I was leaving with read them." He looked down at the chair. "I couldn't get to her hiding place. She had hidden them in the attic under the insulation, so I took a friend with me. I asked her to write me a note giving me permission to take them. I took my friend's son, who was a police officer, with me, and we went there. He was in uniform, and Capote didn't give us any trouble. The house was in a state of disarray. Kyle climbed into the attic and came down with her last diary. She had cut out the middle of a cookbook. Capote continued to glare at us, but that was all the cowardly woman was capable of. I haven't read them, and I know Kyle hasn't either. I didn't promise not to give them to you, and you didn't promise not to read them." He paused and looked at me piercingly again. "Listen, son, I couldn't love you more even if you were my own son. Judy has many flaws, but she's not a liar." He paused again, and my face must have betrayed my thoughts because he continued. "The fact that she didn't tell you about her affair is a kind of lie. But we both know that if you had asked her directly, she would have told you. However, what's written in those diaries is her conversations with herself. It's the truth. You know that. I want you to read them. Find out why she did what she did. You and I both know it's not because she fell in love with that jerk." He fell silent and rubbed his chin. "I can't make you forgive her, but they say that to understand everything is to forgive everything. Maybe if you know more, and if you can't forgive her, maybe, for God's sake, you can show her mercy. Please." The captain left, and I sat there looking at the bag with the diaries, but my mind was elsewhere. I was still thinking about the captain's last words. He had used the word spare twice. He said that Judy was in my power. I didn't like that idea, but I wasn't sure I understood it. I went to the computer, opened the American Heritage Dictionary, and looked up the word spare. There were 4 meanings, starting with the most common. 1. A compassionate attitude, especially toward those in your power. Mercy. 2. A tendency toward kindness and forgiveness. A heart full of mercy. 3. Something for which one is grateful. A blessing. It was a mercy that no one was hurt. 4. Deliverance from distress, relief. Giving food to the homeless was an act of mercy. I slammed the book shut and tried to justify what I had done to Judy. I had simply given her what she wanted. I had helped her make a moral choice in favor of marrying this man. But I couldn't even finish the thought. Yes, it was her choice and she was responsible for it, but I pushed her. What's more, I knew I had power over her. Even during the divorce proceedings, I knew she would do anything in her power to make up for the pain she had caused me, and I shamelessly took advantage of that. I was definitely not in a mood for kindness and forgiveness. I thought about that for a moment. It was true, but who did I still want to punish? Judy or Capote? I ruined his career. No one would hire someone with a 15-year gap in their resume for a management position. And if he listed his last job, any background check would reveal why he was fired. Who would take that risk? He was working at a 24-hour store now, and he was lucky. It's not easy to go from a 6-figure salary to that. And yet I realized that I didn't consider our score settled. I had wanted to destroy her during the robbery. In a flash of insight, I realized that as long as he had Judy, the score would never be settled. I may not need her, but he certainly doesn't deserve her. And that's before he started beating her. I didn't think the 3rd definition of mercy applied in this case, but what about the 4th? Was I inclined to ease Judy's pain? I didn't think so, but that realization didn't make me think too highly of myself. In fact, I felt a slight shame. I tried to remember everything I could about mercy and recalled the phrase, "do not strain at mercy." I had no idea what it meant or where it came from, so I Googled it. Here's what I found. Origin. From Shakespeare's play, The Merchant of Venice. Excerpt. Mercy is not strained. It drips like gentle rain from heaven upon the place beneath it. It is twice blessed. It blesses him that gives it and him that receives it. It is stronger than all the strong. It becomes a monarch on the throne, better than his crown. It is the attribute of God himself, and then earthly power becomes like God's, when mercy triumphs over justice. I felt no relief. I was still busy. It was already a little after noon, but judging by the clock, it was already late at night outside. The room was hot, and the air outside was boiling, as was to be expected in the Midlands at the end of July. I went to my room, stretched out on the bed, and fell asleep. I was not very interested in what they were showing me. When I woke up, it was 4:30 in the morning. I muttered the phrase, "To understand everything is to forgive everything." In the thick pre-dawn darkness, I wondered if this was a cliché. If I understood, would I forgive? And what would that forgiveness look like? I had sworn not to look at her diaries, but now I wanted answers. At first, I just wanted to read what she might have written about the affair. The problem was that she almost never indicated the year and only occasionally the month. Instead, she indicated the day of the week. It was immediately clear that she was not writing for someone else, but for herself. She was trying to make sense of the events of her life. Once I started reading, I couldn't stop. This was the essence of the woman I loved more than I thought a man could love a woman. I could hate what she had done. I hated what she had done, but this was the soul of a being I was willing to fight 100 dragons for. I picked up one of the books, opened it, and started reading. It happened. The cavalry didn't come over the hill. The good guys didn't show up in time. Matt didn't stop the wedding. I stood at the altar, my daughters crying in their little bridesmaid dresses, and Matt didn't burst into the church and save me, but said the words, "Is there anyone here who has even one reason?" I said those words, and this time I won't break them. What a silly fantasy. I didn't even realize until this morning that I was hoping to be saved, so why should anyone save me? Now I'm really in trouble in every sense of the word. I think it started to sink in at dawn. James is out golfing right now, and what kind of man plays golf alone on his honeymoon? I swear I'll never do that again. Oh, Matt, why did you make me marry him? But I know that, don't I? I saw your face that Friday night and a big part of me died. And yet I kept hoping, praying that you would change your mind about this marriage, which was now doomed for me. Would anything have changed if I could have explained it to you? But how can I explain something I don't understand myself? How could I resist his not-so-subtle hints that my job depended on him being happy, and then meekly obey when he ordered me to have a drink at his apartment? Why did I try so hard to hide what was happening from Matt? He would have put an end to it. He would have saved me. But in the last month, I wasn't sure I wanted to be saved. Had I really started to love James, or was I convincing myself of that to justify what I was doing to the man I loved? If I ever thought I loved him, he managed to kill that love over the last 2 months by constantly bragging about how he won me back from a younger man, making me look like a stupid trophy girl. My God, that's me. I'm his 28-year-old trophy wife, his way of feeling young when he's already 50. My God, what have I done? Who will save me now? As I read on, a few things gradually became clear. First, Judy was a submissive person. She wasn't submissive, but she was very inclined to obey those she considered superior to herself. She saw Capote as such a person, and he seemed to understand how to take advantage of her. Second, I had no idea how deeply she was hurt by not having other children. She was afraid that I would use my work as an excuse. She was afraid that I had finally given up when we stopped trying to have children. She was crushed and wounded. I didn't realize how important it was to her. I think her depression made her even more vulnerable to someone like Capote. That doesn't absolve her of responsibility for her affair. She still chose Capote. It's clear from her diary that she knew what she was risking when she took her clothes off and spread her legs for him. She was guilty as sin, and she knew it. I don't think she ever understood why she did it, but she rarely wrote anything that didn't lament her weakness. There were other surprises. She guessed that I was trying to punish her by making her marry Capote when she first caught him with another woman. She thought about it and decided she deserved to be punished. Instead of complaining, she described her pain on several pages. Not her own, but the pain she had caused me. After the first time, she hardly wrote about it. She didn't like it. She was afraid he might bring home a venereal disease, but she didn't care who he slept with. Then I came across the part where her story became horrific. My heart stopped when I read the simple words she used to describe his abuse. He put too much sugar in my coffee, a hard punch in the stomach. I fell to the floor and bruised my hip. This happened within 3 months of their wedding. She never paid attention to it, accepting his beatings as fair punishment for what she had done to me. However, her heart broke every time she thought I might be sleeping with someone else. She wrote several pages about how she first became convinced that I was having fun with another woman. My latest affair, combined with the beatings and pressure from Capote, drove her to suicide. The pressure from Capote was twofold. He wanted her to go to a fertility clinic, and his parents were willing to pay for the treatment. She came up with all kinds of excuses, but the fact remained. She didn't want his child. When I closed the last magazine, I was exhausted, went to bed, and fell asleep. One of the advantages of having your own design company is that you can be as eccentric with your work schedule as you want. I had a strict rule. No one was to call me at home about anything except a broken design. Over the next 2 days, while I was thinking things over, no one called. By the end of that time, I still couldn't make up my mind. James Capote was suffering greatly, but he didn't know it. I didn't know how to get rid of him. The only question was whether he would survive. I seriously considered turning to acquaintances who fished on construction sites. I wouldn't let them on my properties, but even gangsters like nice houses. My fee for designing the house was now in the 7 figures, and that was very lucrative considering how much some of them were selling for. A bad robbery. Nevertheless, Capote was a problem that could wait. Judy, on the other hand, couldn't wait. She was due to be discharged from the hospital in a few days, and although I didn't know what I wanted from her or for her, I knew I didn't want her to go back to their house. Although I was indifferent to her, the thought of the twins living in the same house as Capote filled me with horror. At least that's what I tried to tell myself. But every time I thought about taking action, the image of Judy popped into my head. The argument spun around in my head over and over again. For every reason I could think of to spare him, I could think of just as many reasons not to. While they were spinning around in my head, I switched to the news on TV to distract myself. The anchor was reporting on yet another atrocity committed by someone in the Middle East. I clenched my teeth and lowered my head. On the third morning, early in the morning, determined but still not sure what I had decided, I went to the hospital. When I entered her room, she was still asleep. I stood by her bed and looked at her face. It looked scary. Her eyes opened, and for a moment she smiled at me. Then, realizing where she was, she let out a quiet cry and covered her head with the sheet. "Judy, we need to talk. I saw everything, and we're both going to feel like we're in a bad movie if we talk through a sheet." She made a sound between a giggle and a snort but lowered the sheet. Although she was smiling, the smile didn't reach her eyes. "Dad said he gave you my diaries. He had no right to do that, and I'm sorry he did. I was very angry, but then I realized that I never wanted to hide anything from you. If you had asked, I would have given them to you. I don't remember exactly what I wrote in them, but I would appreciate it if you would put them away before letting the girls read them." I smiled. "I would never let them see what you think about our years together." I looked into her eyes, and they were so wide open that it felt like I was looking into her soul. It was her whole soul. No one should be as vulnerable as she was. In a very quiet voice, almost a whisper, she said, "I wanted to tell you why I did it. But I didn't want to. I really didn't want to, but I did it. I don't blame you for divorcing me and making me marry James. I deserved it. But I want you to know that I would have done anything to make it less painful for you." She paused to blow her nose, but it turned into a sniffle and she looked dejected as she continued. "I can't even say that I didn't know how much it hurt you when you caught me. I thought it would happen right after the first time. When it kept happening, I didn't know what to think. I never loved you any less, but I guess I wanted you to save me, and strangely enough, I was upset that you didn't. It always surprised me that you didn't suspect anything until that night." I clenched my teeth. "No, I didn't suspect a thing. I trusted you completely. If you had told me the sun rose in the west, I would have called the McDonald Observatory in the Davis Mountains and asked why, and then argued with them if they tried to deny it." She took a deep breath, held it, and then exhaled slowly. I've never been on such a pedestal I could live like. She paused as usual and changed the subject. Where are we going next? I smiled. She knew how such abrupt changes in conversation affected me. I liked her quick wit, but I hated having to chase her. First of all, you're not going back to his house. Never, ever. She tilted her head and gave me the kind of look a teacher might give a particularly slow student. That's not an option. I married him, for better or for worse. And the worst turned out to be much worse than I had planned. I felt myself starting to lose my composure. Judy, that's not an option. Imagine me coming in on a white horse and rescuing you. I'm telling you, you're not going back. I noticed a slight confusion for the first time. You read that in my diary, didn't you? I swore I would never break my marriage vows again. And you should know that too. He broke all his marriage vows. He cheated on you. He didn't love or appreciate you. He destroyed this marriage, not you. You're not tied to him. She blinked several times and I saw her indecision. If you go back to him, I'll never let you see the girls. I can't risk him hurting them. She broke down, covered her face with her hands, and cried. I sat down on the bed and hugged her. When she realized what I was doing, she pulled me closer and wet my shirt. Crying, she asked, Where will I go? What will I do? I'll help you and make sure he can't hurt you. I'll ask my lawyer to prepare divorce papers and a restraining order. If I bring them to you this afternoon, will you sign them? Without looking up, Judy nodded toward my chest. After lunch, my lawyer and two of his secretaries came to Judy's room. He asked her to sign the papers, and his secretaries notarized them. When everything was ready, he left to file the papers before the court closed, leaving me alone with Judy. She took my hand and pressed it against her cheek, still wet from tears. Then, her eyes flashing, she asked, When this is all over, will you take me back? It was the question I had been dreading. I remembered the realization that had come to me as I listened to the news on television. War is cruel and inhumane by its very nature, but if it is not a war in which prisoners are not taken, in which all the men, women, and children of the enemy are destroyed, there must be room for peace. Without mercy, wars last for millennia. You had to show mercy to your enemy. Otherwise, you were just a savage. Mercy didn't mean surrender. It meant that you retained part of your humanity and allowed your enemy to retain theirs. Now was the time to show mercy to Judy. I did everything I could. 5 years later, I was sitting in the waiting room of the maternity ward. Judy was being transferred from the delivery room to the operating room, where another set of twins, this time boys, were being born. I was sitting next to the nervous father, who was becoming a father for the first time, and we were talking when the nurse announced that Judy was ready. Mark stood up, shook my hand, and said, Thanks for coming. It's going to be a tough few months, isn't it? I smiled. Yeah, and the girls are going crazy. I'll try to keep them home as long as possible, but I'll have a lot to do too. He nodded nervously and walked over to Judy. Mark is a good guy, an Army Reserve major and captain of the Midland Fire Department. He earned, but didn't receive, a Silver Star in Afghanistan and a second Purple Heart in Iraq. I admire him for that. He was good for Judy, and I was glad they found each other. But what about me? How did I answer the question Judy asked me 5 years ago? I tried to be kind. No, Judy, I won't. She lowered her eyes, and tears streamed down her cheeks again. When she finally pulled herself together, she was able to meet my gaze and asked, Why? I really wanted to say, Because I want a wife I can put on a pedestal, not one I have to keep on a short leash to keep her faithful. But I didn't say that. And Shakespeare's gentle rain from above fell on me and drowned my anger. Okay, I said it, but I tried to say it politely. I said, Now I understand us better than when we were married. We're just not right for each other. That doesn't mean either of us is a bad person, but you need someone who will guide you through life, and that's not me. I'm too self-centered. There will always be a special place in my heart for the woman who gave me twins. No, that's not true either. You will always be my first love, but we're just not right for each other. We both made the wrong choice, but together as friends, we may be able to help each other make our lives better. Mark approached Judy. He wasn't holding her on a leash, but on a safety harness used by mountain climbers. They approached each other, and Judy, securely held on the leash, blossomed like she never had when we were married. Mark and Judy lived at the same school as me. The twins could ride their bikes between our houses. We didn't socialize, but we were very supportive of each other. If we disagreed about something, we would go to the captain for help, and the girls never knew about our disagreements. The twins complained with mock bitterness that they had been cursed with too many parents. But despite all their complaints, they loved Mark and he loved them. They were thrilled to have new brothers, lots of new brothers. You see, I wasn't at the hospital to support Mark or Judy. We weren't that close. It was one of those strange pranks that life plays on you. I was there to see my wife and our new twins, who had been born the day before. Happy? Perhaps mercy doesn't mean letting someone off the hook, but simply that the consequences should be less than they deserve. It meant that I shouldn't punish Judy as harshly as I could have. Bringing Judy back wouldn't have been mercy, but something else. I met my wife through a friend of Judy's, and we were the couple everyone dreamed of. I put her on a special pedestal, and she keeps my inflated ego in check. She loves my girls, and they love her. If Judy hadn't cheated, we'd still be married. It would have been better for the twins, but not for me. Maybe we got married too young. Maybe we saw each other as acceptable partners and didn't expect perfection. Maybe we didn't have time to grow up and we both changed with age. All I know for sure is that I was never and could never have been as happy with Judy as I am with my wife. Showing mercy to Capote proved more difficult. I came close, but in the end I decided that for a man like him, working for almost minimum wage was enough. He was broken. I didn't need to break his body. Okay, maybe the prison sentence I got him for assault played a part. However, about a year ago, I had a reason to contact him. A very foolish woman, despite warnings, simply opened her heart to this good man. I will never understand why some people are so foolish. When I found out about his wedding, my heart was filled with such compassion for this foolish woman that I refused to take on this client. As it happened, my client's cousin was involved in risky personal loans. When the cousin found out about the situation, he was so moved by human kindness that he sent one of his business partners to Capote to gently explain to him that good boys don't hit girls. They say the lesson didn't need to be repeated. It's good to have friends on the low level. Yes, I'm the first to admit that I still have a lot to learn and a long way to go before anyone would consider me merciful. But here's the thing. If you don't show mercy, it ties you to the person or problem. Besides, it insults your better nature. I couldn't forgive myself for what I did to Judy, but when I showed her mercy, I was able to show it to myself. It broke the steel armor I had built around my heart and opened it up to the possibility of a happy future. The end. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel and stay tuned for more videos.